Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Productive Attorney. My name is Jim Zeta. I'll be your host. The Productive Attorney podcast is a podcast about how you can be productive during your work so that you can enjoy the things outside of work that you like to do that are outside of the law. This podcast, I want to get real about something called, I want to get real about mental health. A lot of times I hear people talk about mental health and all they do is give you statistics, and then at the end of the statistics they give you a phone number to call for help. And I don't think that's real. I think it's something that we don't talk about enough in the legal profession, and I want to get to it, and I want to get into what causes it, what it is, how to recognize it, and then what steps you can take, small or big, to go ahead and deal with the mental health. Lawyers are in kind of a unique position when it comes to mental health. There's a study out of Harvard which says that the lawyers are the loneliest profession. I don't know. I think that's a little much. We do have a difficult profession, and sometimes it is lonely. I'm working on a case right now that I can't tell anybody about. There are facts that are fascinating. There's analysis that's fascinating, but I can't talk to a single person about it. There's very sensitive attorney-client information involved in that case. And so what that gives stress, but what are the other kind of causes of stresses of attorneys? What's the reason why we struggle with it? And a lot of times they're not what you really think they are. Yeah, we have problems with clients, but most people who have been practicing long enough know that there are ways to work around difficult clients, and that's just kind of part of the job. It's like any job that is in the service industry, you're going to have problems. One of the unique things about being a lawyer, though, is there's always someone on the other side. If you're involved in litigation or you're involved in a transaction with another side, there's always someone on the other side that's going to point out your mistakes. And so not only are you worried about your client and making sure that you do things right, but you got an opposing counsel who's going to do it. And if you screw up enough, you might have a malpractice issue. So there's a lot of stress associated with that. Another thing that brings stress to practice is if the opposing counsel's a jerk. There is, I hear, that's just this lawyer being this lawyer. I've heard that said about President Trump that's just Trump being Trump. Yeah, I don't buy that as an excuse as an attorney. I don't buy that as an excuse as a politician. I don't buy that excuse anywhere. That's just this person being this person. No, that person is being a jerk. That person is not being easy to get along with. But sometimes that's true to their personality. There are some lawyers who in real life are just jerks, and it works for them, and that's who they are, and they're being themselves. And in those situations, there's a lot of stress associated with that. My solution in those situations is, as soon as that person does something that is, in my opinion, shady or across the line, I just say, look, it looks like we can't communicate anymore and can't get along well. Everything that you need, you send me a request in writing. Everything I need, I'll send you a request in writing. That way we can get past that. But still, it is not pleasant. It's not enjoyable. It makes our life work. Then if you're involved in a big firm, or you're involved in defense work, or you hourly billable hours, that's a huge stressor. If a firm wants you to give 1,800 hours, that's 37.5 hours a week of billable time, 7.5 hours a day. But anybody who's ever done that knows that to truly do 7.5 hours, you got to work 10. I just talked to an attorney who's going to work for a plaintiff's firm. That plaintiff's firm wants them there at 8, wants them there the whole day, wants them to leave at 6, and they have to come in 2 Saturdays a week. I mean, that's stressful. That's just in and of itself stressful. Then you can have bad bosses or people that you work with that are bad. That makes it tough. And then we're all worried about, where's our next client going to come from? I know I have enough business right now. I know we're busy right now, but where are we at in a year or 2 years or 3 years from now? Is that phone going to keep ringing? Is that email going to still keep coming in? And then once you get the client, can I keep the client happy, and can I collect on the money that I've bought ahead and billed? Are they going to pay my bill? And then on top of that, you layer your office politics at work, but then people have home lives, and there is stress associated with significant others. There's stress associated with children. There's success associated with hobbies that you're involved in. Things happen, cars break down, houses flood, apartments get mold, dogs and cats get sick. There's all kinds of issues that happen in life that create stress. And so when you put all of those together, lawyers tend to have a higher rate of mental health issues, and they form themselves in sort of several different ways, and lawyers hide it pretty well because we have to. That's what we are. We take care of our clients. We have to show that we're good marketing, that we're doing billing and all this other stuff. But sometimes when the lights turn out, there's depression, there's anxiety, there is, and you get into this exhaustion stage where you just are worn out and are just kind of almost a zombie as you go through some of the days. And then you continuously think, well, I don't have enough. I haven't done enough billable hours. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough ability, power. I'm not politically aligned enough. I don't know the judges well enough. It's always not enough, right? And social media tends to exaggerate that significantly, of all these other people out here doing these great things, and here I am just by myself, being lonely, doing all these work and all these problems, and no one cares, and everybody's having a great time. And so you get depression, anxiety, and you get what the Sundays, which are on Sundays, you get anxious. You start thinking about, man, I was going to work hard this weekend, and I didn't do as much as I wanted to do, and I got so much to do next week, and I let my guard down this weekend, and I really kind of did things for myself, which I should have done, but now I'm feeling guilty about it, and I have to go back to work. And Sunday nights, for me personally, throughout my career, there have been times when anxiety on a Sunday night is crippling. It's just overwhelming, where you just can barely sleep. You're anxious. You're worried about the next day. How am I going to get through it? I should have done more. That sort of thing. And so when you have these problems and these mental health issues, and mental health has got a stigma. So I'm not saying mental health in a stigma sort of way. I'm just saying things just aren't right. You're feeling off. You're feeling down. You're feeling a little depressed. You don't see, a good future. You're worried about all kinds of things and over anxious. And so these things manifest themselves in several ways. What I have seen and what other people have done, one is overeating. A second one that is kind of a hidden symptom is overworking. There are times when you will make an excuse to avoid other problems by overworking. I did that when my kids, I've talked about it before in the podcast, when my kids were really young. I just don't like the larva stage, the young stage for kids, and so I would just work more. But that's damaging to your relationship. It may look you good on the hero sheets, but it's not. You're overworking. Some people overexercise. You've got people that are strong athletes who throw everything into their athletics and they don't slow down. You've got people who run every day. You got people who do things and don't rest. And so there's over-exercise involved. Of course, there's also not exercising, and that's another symptom, is you get lethargic and lazy and just sit on the couch all day and don't do anything. It's crippling, and it makes you not function. Other people use alcohol, well documented. The way I look at alcohol is there are people who have drank alcohol their whole life, and they know when they're increasing. So I don't have to tell anybody out there. I don't drink, and I haven't had a drink since the engagement since my wedding. And so I don't drink, and so I can't say it, but I've seen people who have, and what you see, like a lot of other things, is a general increase. Very slight, but a general increase in the alcohol intake. And when you see that general increase, you'll recognize it yourself. No one else will, but you'll find yourself hiding water or hiding wine bottles or drinking extra beer, and it creeps up on you. Next thing you know, you're drinking more than you should, and you are, and it's to escape what's going on. There's nothing I can say to tell you when you've gone too far, but if you drink alcohol, hey, I got to cut back a little bit. Other people use prescription drugs. And that we'll talk about in a little bit, but other people use recreational drugs, and in certain states marijuana is legal and it really does help certain people, but when you get into the hard stuff and you've totally escaped and it's affecting your health, there's a problem. Other people escape through social media. There are people who just cannot, or who are addicted to social media, who are addicted to Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. They have to know what's going on. It's like when you go to the refrigerator and you open it and there's nothing there to eat, and you walk away, and then 15 minutes later you go back and you open the refrigerator again. People do that with social media. They just go back and look and nothing's changed. And then when they see things on social media that is the life that they picture for themselves, and other people are living it, they feel bad about themselves. And if other people say they're living it, they're not. They have the same issues that we talked about early. They have work problems at work. They have problems with houses and cars and kids and pets and all that kind of stuff. And it's just cleaned up and filtered for social media. Other people get involved in toxic relationships, and it's kind of mind-boggling sometimes to see people get involved in these relationships. But they get in them and then they won't get out. And that's another symptom of stress and anxiety and feeling down about yourself. I'm not strong enough, so I'm in this relationship and I'm just going to stick it out and make my way through. That's a hard one to get out. You've also got pornography and sex addiction. Those are other issues that can become symptoms and become addictions to escape from all the stress that's associated with being an attorney. And finally, a symptom is simply loneliness. And again, we're technically one of the loneliest people around, or loneliest professions around. Okay, so you've got these stresses and you're starting to do some of these things. One of the things I mentioned, or something I didn't even mention, something I might not even thought about, but you yourself, and that to me is the critical point even of this podcast, is you yourself know when you are doing things that are the opposite of productive. And this is called the productive attorney. This is the opposite of productive. You're going and doing things that are harmful to yourself, that are toxic, that are less than beneficial. And not only do you do it to yourself, but you start to recognize that some of your behaviors are starting to affect people in your life, being family, friends, colleagues, social network. You start to see breakdowns in those because you're engaging in some of the activities that we talked about to escape some of the stresses that we talked about. And then those activities, the overeating, overworking, overexercising, those become all-consuming and affect everything else. And so the first step for you as an attorney is to recognize it. Your brain, when it's depressed and when it's anxious, will lie to you, will tell you that, everything's okay, we're just working our way through it, or will paralyze you to a point where you just think, I can't do it, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I just can't do it. Even in those situations, there'll be a point when you have a moment of clarity, there'll be a point when you recognize that you're suffering, that you're doing things that aren't productive, that you're doing things that are destructive to yourself. And so the very first thing you have to do is to recognize it and then identify it. What is it that I'm doing? What am I doing too much of? What am I doing too little of? What am I obsessed with? One of the things for me is I'm somebody who likes to have objective markers, right? And so I watch my weight really closely, and I watch what I eat really closely, and I watch my heart rate is a good example. I have a resting heart rate, and I watch that like a hawk. And sometimes I'm obsessive about it, and to the point where it's not healthy. And when I start recognizing that, dude, if your resting heart rate is only like 2 or 3 beats higher, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to go out there and try and fix it. Just move on. You're healthy. Be happy that you're healthy and stop it and recognize that behavior. But that's just minor stuff, right? What I'm talking about is little stuff. If you've got bigger stuff, I mean real bigger stuff, to the point where you've got suicidal ideations, you've got, real just total paralysis of being able to work, not paying your bills, not doing the things that you should be doing, way over drinking to the point of, missing meetings, missing clients, stuff like that. You got to recognize it, and then you got to identify it first. And that's the very first step. And sometimes that's the hardest step, is admitting to yourself that there's a problem. The second step is, how do I solve this thing? And this is what I tell my children all the time. I tell my students all the time. I tell everybody all the time. And my wife gets sick of hearing of it. How do you solve this big problem? How do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. How do you solve a problem? One little step at a time. You know, when people work out and come to the gym, 80% of it is getting to the gym. It's not the workout itself. If you can get the workout clothes on and get yourself to the gym, or get your workout clothes on and get yourself out to the trail or to the usual course that you like to run, you've done 80% of the work. And then you just take one step at a time. And all you have to do is that step of getting the clothes on to go work out, that step of recognizing a problem and taking the first step on your journey to try to fix it. And so then how do you fix it? How do you fix these problems now that you've identified it and you're ready to eat the elephant and take one step at a time? Well, there's really three ways that I am not a mental health professional, so this is not any mental health advice that you take to the bank. I'm just giving you my experiences through the years. But the first one is holistic, and that is exercise, nutrition, and sleep. Those three things are things that you can start to do for yourself. Get your sleep right. Go to bed at approximately the same time. Wake up at the same time. And you yourself know how many hours of sleep you need a night to be productive. For me, it's 7.5. If I get under 6, I'm a zombie the next day. If I can get between 7.5 and 8.5, that's great. But what I also find is that there are times that on the weekends will stay up till maybe midnight, and then on the Sunday I go to bed at 9 and wake up at 5, and I've still got problems because I've messed up with the rhythm. And so you've got to know yourself on the sleep. Nutrition, we've talked about nutrition, what to eat, what not to eat. If you're just filling yourself up with sweets and sugars and you're not eating a healthy diet, then that's a problem, and you can try and work on that. And then exercise. And by exercise, I don't mean, go out and run a marathon. I just mean move. Move your body. In whatever way is the most comfortable for you, get up and move your body. If it's just to get out and take the garbage out, get up and take the garbage out. If it's just to get up and walk to the other room, walk to the other room. If it's to sit there and do 10 push-ups in the family room floor, do 10 push-ups. Just whatever it takes for you to get started, to put that shirt on for the workout, to take that first step to begin to eat the elephant. That may not be enough, and in many cases it's not enough. At that point, then I think you have to be honest with yourself and ask for counseling and go get counseling. And counseling used to be a stigma. I think now people actually brag about the fact that they go to counseling, that they're working towards issues, that they're trying to work out their problems. I don't believe it's something that needs to be a stigma, but I also don't mean it needs to be something that you brag about. It's counseling that you get when you need it. My wife and I are very open about the fact that we went to marriage counseling. And the reason why we went to marriage counseling is because when we originally had disagreements in our marriage, we both wanted to be right, and we both wanted the other person to admit that we were right. And we would have these discussions and disagreements, and eventually one side would be winning, if you will. And there's never a winning argument between significant others, but one side would be winning, and then the other side would throw in an issue that they were right on. So they're saying, kind of indirectly, you might be right, but you did this terrible thing way back when, and we were both guilty of this. And what happened was we could not end our disagreements. We would go sometimes an hour, hour and a half, and it was just brutal for both of us. And we had kids, young kids at the time, and we just couldn't figure it out. And so we went to a counselor who did the first thing that we talked about. Number thing, we recognized we had a problem. The second thing is we identified our problem through our counselor, and that was we couldn't finish these arguments. And then the third thing to solve it was, hey, don't make the other side admit that they're wrong. Agree to disagree. You've expressed your emotions. Both sides have expressed their emotions. If there's a solution, go towards the solution. If not, table it till the next day till you're not upset. And if it's important enough, we'll talk about it the next day. our disagreements went from an hour and a half and 2 hours down to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And we were able to work through what was a major issue in our relationship. And so for me, that was a win. And we used to check in for the counselor, and eventually we had more and more time between our counseling sessions to the point where we just naturally, organically stopped going. And if we ever have another issue come up similar, we're going to head on back. If that doesn't work enough, then you've always got medications. And I am not going to talk on this podcast about what's the right medications or what's the wrong medications. If you are in a situation where your mental health is significantly bad enough and you are getting counseling and you are getting professional help, then they could get you on medications. And I cannot give an opinion as to what works and what doesn't work. I do know that I've had clients who had mental health problems, and I've had friends who've had mental health problems, and that medications have helped them significantly. You just need a professional to tell you what to do. And then for attorneys, in every jurisdiction, nationally and statewide, there is a lawyer's assistance program. And in every one of these jurisdictions, the lawyer's assistance program is confidential. And you could be in a situation where you start to recognize it. We talk about those bad behaviors that we talked about, and you start to recognize it. So Texas has the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program called TLAP, 100% confidential. You can look it up. I'm not going to give you a phone number or anything like that. You can just look up Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. They're excellent. You go ahead and make a call to them, and they will start the process to help you recognize and identify what your issues are and get you in front of some professionals. Look, there are minor issues that we go through that cause stress that don't rise to the level of a mental health crisis. We all are there. We've all had those. But in 32 years that I've been doing it, there are several occasions where it went beyond minor stress and became a mental health issue with me, where I needed to go back, recognize what the issue was, start doing the holistic issue, and then in the case of my relationship with my wife, we had to go to the next step of counseling. And it's not something that I'm proud of or ashamed of. Either way, it is what it was, and it made a difference in my life. So if you're having those issues, all I would do is encourage you to be strong enough to recognize it, identify it, and start seeking some of the solutions that we talked about. My name is Jim Zeta. Thank you for listening. This was The Productive Attorney.